Let's start out the game with our opening stage. E4, white plays E4, black plays E7, pawn to E5, and in this case we're gonna do the same exact thing. Knight comes out to F3, black's knight comes out to C6, and in this situation white decides to attack the knight with a bishop. Okay, as the knight is attacking the pawn, black is defending the pawn with his knight. Now white is gonna wanna go after that knight in order to be able to capture the pawn on E5. For example, bishop can come out all the way along this diagonal, be placed right here on B5. This, by the way, is called Ruy Lopez opening, or Spanish. Okay, this Ruy Lopez is a master chess player from Spain. So that's the opening that was named after him. Bishop goes to B5 as the bishop is ready to capture that knight on C6. In this case, let's say black said, hey, I'm going to attack the bishop with a pawn. As you guys remember, the pawns move 1 or 2 squares forward initially and can move 1 square forward after that. But at the same time, if you or your opponent wants to capture something with a pawn, in that case your pawn would be capturing another piece at a diagonally. So this pawn is attacking the bishop. The pawn wants to take the bishop diagonally. So the bishop better do something. Better retreat, or in this scenario we're going to explore the trade where the bishop is going to be traded for the knight. Bishop takes the knight. So now in this case black has 2 ways to recapture the bishop with one of the pawns. As you guys can quite figure it out by now, this is a moment for you to see, well, which one of the pawns can capture, which ones of the pawns can capture the bishop right there on C6. In this case we got the pawn on D7 and the pawn on B7 that can do that. So D7 pawn captures the bishop on C6. And in this case, we got the bishop traded for the knight. So what would you guys think is the stronger piece? Is it going to be the bishop or the knight? Now the answer to that is the pieces are very close in their value. So you could argue that the bishop is better than the knight, or you could say the knight is better than the bishop. And it's sometimes it's a preference that you may have. Well, I like the knights over the bishops, at least as you're learning the game, whichever piece you think you can operate better. But as you become stronger, you realize that there's an objective, meaning that there's an objective value of the pieces, where each one of the pieces is worth so much, based on your evaluation of the scenarios of things going on around the board. Now that is going to be a proper way to estimate. But looking overall, when the bishop captures the knight on C6, the trade becomes pretty much even, where the bishop is worth 3 points and the knight is worth 3 points. Let's continue on with our situation, starting from the opening, and let's go ahead and continue the development. So in this lesson we're focusing on the value of the pieces as they get traded off, and the development of the pieces as the game unfolds. White goes ahead and develops the bishop over to C4. This is the development of the bishop to a pretty standard square, where white is targeting black's king. Okay, this is a situation where white is influencing the game along this diagonal. The diagonal would be starting at B3 and continuing all the way to G8. At this point, black has a couple opportunities for development. Development meaning taking the pieces out. We got the bishop here on F8 that can be developed, and we got the knight on G8 that can be developed. So let's get this bishop out here from F8 to C5. The bishop will be very close to the bishop on c4. The bishop on c5, very close to the bishop on c4. Now, those pieces cannot capture each other as they are on the opposite color and they're right next to each other, as opposed to facing each other in a battle. The bishop comes out to c4. At this point, this is white's move, and white is going to develop the knight on c3. Black has the opportunity to develop the next piece, which is going to be the knight on g8. So the knight from g8 is going to be developed to f6. Now once again, we have a very similar looking position for black and for white, where the pieces are developing. And we call it symmetrical. The position is symmetrical. In this case, what is the last piece that each one of the opponents, each one of the sides needs to develop at this point? What is that piece? And the answer to that is the piece for white is the bishop on c1, c1 right here, and for black the bishop on c8 right here. So white is going to be opening up the bishop, moving the pawn to d3, and black is going to be developing by moving the pawn on d6. At this point, the bishop has a direct pathway to open up, to come out. In this case, let's go ahead and get our bishop over to g5. As the bishop comes out to g5, the bishop is now at this point targeting the knight. Black can go ahead and get the bishop out to g4, so the position is still very similar. In this case, let's once again see what this exchange of the bishop for the knight is going to lead to. So bishop takes the knight, queen takes f6. In this case, we got the bishop traded for the knight. So once again, at any given point, most of the time, you know, the relationship between the bishop and the knight is going to be such that the pieces are worth about the same. So we could say the bishop is worth 3 points and the knight is worth 3 points. Now, as we go along, let's imagine a scenario where in this situation, let's say we decide to move our queen over to e2. Okay, and now in this case, black can attack the queen with one of its pieces. Okay, there's a couple ways to do that. It could be done by a bishop or one of black's knights. So think about a way that black can play a move after which the next move, the following move, is going to be an attack on the queen. In this case, we got the bishop that can do that, the bishop from g4 and the knight from c6. So let's start out with the bishop. Bishop takes f3. At this point, the bishop just captured the knight on f3. Okay, so at this point, the bishop would be attacking the queen. So in a situation like this, we really don't want to allow our opponent to get a queen for just the bishop. So at this point, we're actually going to stop further attempts by black by just capturing the bishop here on f3 with a queen. Now, imagine a scenario where white, let's say, decided to move a knight to d5. Okay, totally forgetting that the queen is hanging. In this case, not only the bishop won the knight, at this point the bishop can capture a whole queen, where the bishop, which is 3 points, is winning a queen, which is 9 points. You could say 9.5, you can say 10 points, but that's basically between 9 and 10 points. The queen is worth 9 or 10 points. And in that scenario, let's say white decides to pick up this bishop right here. So in this case, at the end of the day, as black was playing, black captured the knight and black captured the queen for a bishop. So in this case, we could say black won 9 points. Okay, the bishop is going to be worth about the same as the knight. The queen is extra 9 points that black wins. 9 points is a lot, a big advantage in the game, whereas just one extra pawn can win the game, having 9 extra points is a huge advantage. Now, let's explore our last opportunity here. So, last relationship between the pieces, last thing that we need to understand to complete this relationship between the pieces and how much they're worth. Let's imagine a scenario where we have our pieces placed in a way that the bishop is going to be targeting the rook. Let's say this is white's move, and white decided to go off to the side with a knight. Now, the bishop in this case can go ahead and capture the rook. As the knight retreating, the knight was just pinned, which is the relationship where the bishop is pinning the knight. And this is something that we're gonna find out in just a moment. So the bishop is pinning the knight. As the knight retreats, the bishop can now go ahead and capture the rook on d1. As the bishop takes the rook on d1, white can go ahead and capture the bishop. Let's say with the rook, the queen, or the knight. In this case, the bishop just took the rook. So the bishop got exchanged for the rook. Now, here's the question. How much is the rook worth compared to the bishop? Now, in different scenarios, one piece can cost more than another piece based on how strong it is and how much it is attacking, how much damage it's doing. In this case, the rook is going to be in general, it's cost 5 points, and the bishop is costing 3 points. So in a way, when the bishop captures the rook and white can recapture the bishop, black is going to be winning a rook for a bishop, which is 5 minus 3 is going to be equal to 2. This is 2 points that, in this case, black just won in this operation. As